At 12:43 in the afternoon, Alpha King Adrian Vale was folded inside a ceremonial cabinet with his royal knees beside his royal ears. The cabinet had once held the crown jewels. It had never been expected to smuggle the crown itself through a luncheon. Nora Bell pushed it past 32 marriage candidates while a silver spoon inside rattled against the king's boot. Every noble head in the Sun Hall turned. Nora smiled with the calm dignity of a woman transporting furniture instead of a kidnapped monarch. "Restoration emergency," she announced. The cabinet gave a quiet, deeply royal thump. Lady Mirabelle Harrow narrowed her eyes. She was beautiful, wealthy, and currently wearing enough diamonds to fund 3 hospitals or 1 very aggressive hat. Did that cabinet just move? Nora placed both hands on the carved walnut doors. Old wood settles in warm weather. From inside came another thump, followed by a muffled sound that might have been a king reconsidering every choice since birth. Nora widened her smile. Very old wood. That was the moment she understood 2 things. First, helping the Alpha King escape his own bride banquet had been a poor decision. Second, it was still the best decision anyone had made at the banquet. The trouble had begun 3 hours earlier at Bell & Finch Antiques. Nora was repairing a clock that gained 11 minutes every hour and rang 13 times at noon. She respected its commitment to dishonesty. The crowded shop smelled of polish, old paper, metal oil, and the cinnamon buns Mr. Finch hid badly. Nora worked in thin leather gloves. Customers thought the gloves protected antiques. In truth, they protected Nora from the memories trapped inside them. Most objects preserved the latest memory strong enough to leave an emotional mark. Ordinary handling changed nothing. Nora might touch a ring and feel grief, devotion, or the panic of someone searching for spectacles already on his head. Her aunt had taught her to hide the ability. People disliked mysteries until a poor Omega could solve them. Then they became interested in owning the Omega. Mr. Finch brought her a cream envelope packed with the palace collection. Bell and Finch had loaned ceremonial silver to that day's Royal Heritage Luncheon. The invitation inside named Miss Nora Bell. "Have you secretly become important?" Mr. Finch asked. "Not before breakfast." The card was intended for Lady Nora Bell. It invited her to a formal presentation of marriage candidates to Alpha King Adrian. The newspapers called it a heritage luncheon. Everyone else called it the bride banquet. Nora meant to return the invitation. Then a palace footman arrived carrying her instruction card. "This cup is 500 years old. Do not put fruit pits in it." "What happened?" Nora asked. The footman looked ashamed. "Fruit pits." Palace rules barred an unranked Omega craftswoman from the formal hall. The incorrect invitation offered another entrance. Mr. Finch produced an old pale blue dress and a hat crowded with silk flowers. "Too much?" he asked. "Much too much." Mr. Finch approved. "Excellent. No one questions confidence." Nora dressed, repaired 1 loose seam, and inspected herself. She looked like an antique restorer being attacked by spring. She would enter, rescue the silver, and leave unnoticed. Plans had no memories. They had not yet learned shame. The Sun Palace stood above the capital on a hill of white stone and bad decisions. At midday, its windows flashed while carriages crowded the drive. Nora's hired cab stopped far from the entrance because its weak wheel disliked royal gravel. She paid the driver and walked. The guards accepted the invitation without question. A steward announced Miss Nora Bell with no title or territory. Several guests looked curious. Nora answered with the serene expression of a woman whose mysterious importance was too exhausting to explain. Inside, sunlight poured through the glass ceiling. Music floated over tables gleaming with crystal, flowers, and Nora's endangered silver. At the far end stood Alpha King Adrian Vale. Nora had seen his face on coins, official portraits, and commemorative plates that sold poorly because he looked annoyed by soup. In person, he was taller and younger than the portraits suggested. Dark hair framed a severe face. His black formal coat carried silver embroidery at the collar and cuffs. He was surrounded by eligible ladies. His expression suggested he had recently been informed that escape was punishable by another conversation. Adrian's alpha presence filled the hall with quiet pressure. Nobles straightened when he looked their way. Omegas lowered their gazes. Even the musicians seemed to play more carefully. Nora's own Omega instincts advised distance, politeness, and possibly emigration. Nora thanked them for their opinion and went to inspect the silver. The first cup contained 2 cherry pits. The second held a folded betting slip. Someone had placed a wet spoon on the 17th century treaty tray. Nora moved through the tables, removing dangers while pretending to admire decorations. She replaced the cup, pocketed the betting slip, and rescued the tray before moisture marked it. Lady Mirabelle Harrow approached with 2 companions. Mirabelle was the clear favorite of the banquet. Her uncle controlled royal ceremonies, 3 newspapers, and the seating plan. Her white gown appeared designed to remind everyone that she had never been near dust. She lifted the treaty tray before Nora could stop her. What an odd little plate. Nora felt a muscle move near her eye. It carried the signatures that ended the West Border War. Mirabelle glanced at the tray. Then it has already survived worse than cake. She placed a lemon tart on it. Nora understood why revolutions happened. She stepped forward with a pleasant smile. The acid may damage the engraving. Mirabelle looked her over. Are you an expert? Nora remembered the borrowed dress, the incorrect invitation, and the palace prison. I was raised among old things. That was entirely true. Mr. Finch was 71 and objected to modern hinges. Mirabelle surrendered the tray. How educational! Her smile implied that education was a minor skin condition. Nora carried the tray away before she committed treason with a pastry fork. Across the hall, Adrian watched the exchange. For one moment, their eyes met. His were gray, steady, and much more amused than his mouth. Then Lord Harrow stepped between them. The ceremony minister was broad, smooth-faced, and wrapped in crimson formal robes. He guided another young woman toward the king. Your Majesty, Lady Celia has translated 47 ancient love poems. Adrian's face became solemn. All of them? Every one. A remarkable act of endurance. Lady Celia began explaining the symbolic importance of sighing near fountains. Adrian listened with royal discipline. Only his right hand betrayed him. It slipped into his coat, withdrew a silver watch, and opened it beneath his cuff. 3 minutes later, he checked again. Nora noticed because restorers noticed repeated movement. Repeated movement caused wear. She also noticed his gaze drifting toward the west doors, the musician's stare, and the raised stage used for speeches. He was not admiring architecture. He was measuring exits. Nora should have stayed away. Instead, she crossed behind him to recover a ceremonial bowl someone had filled with sugared almonds. Lady Celia completed a long explanation of moonlight. Adrian bowed. You have given me much to consider. His tone carried the exhausted courtesy of a man considering whether windows could be opened from the outside. As he stepped back, another guest bumped Nora's shoulder. Her gloved hand caught the edge of the table. Her other hand closed around Adrian's exposed watch. The glove had a split near the thumb. Cold silver touched her skin. The sun hall vanished. Nora stood inside a memory. Adrian was alone in a palace study at dawn, bent over a floor plan. His coat lay across a chair. His sleeves were rolled up. 7 routes had been marked in black ink. The first led through the west door. In the next flash, Lord Harrow intercepted him with a visiting duchess. The second used the musician's stare. A cellist blocked it with an instrument case while apologizing for 9 uninterrupted minutes. The third required a false diplomatic message. The Queen Mother read the message, corrected its grammar, and sent him back. The fourth ended in a linen cupboard. The fifth involved a dumbwaiter designed for cakes, not kings. The sixth brought him into a storage room where a broken latch trapped him until a maid heard him threatening the door. The 7th route crossed the old stage lift and descended into the scenery corridor. Adrian circled it twice. Then he checked an outdated servant schedule and crossed it out. The memory released Nora. She staggered against the table. Adrian caught her elbow before she struck the silver bowl. Are you unwell? His voice was low enough not to draw attention. Nora recovered her hand and pulled the torn glove closed. The memory left behind a trace of his frustration, dry and hot beneath her ribs. Only offended by the almonds. Adrian glanced at the bowl. Have they insulted you? They are sitting in a coronation basin. He looked from Nora to the almonds. I see. Do you? Not remotely, but you appear prepared to explain. Nora removed the bowl from danger. She should walk away. She should repair her glove. She should forget the king's 7 humiliating escape attempts. Instead, she noticed the stage manager leave through a side door. A servant had spilled punch near the east table, drawing half the staff away. The current service schedule differed from the one in Adrian's memory. The 7th route was open. Nora placed the basin safely on a display stand. You check the west door every 3 minutes. Adrian's attention sharpened. She kept her voice casual. You watch the musicians whenever Lord Harrow brings another lady. You also looked at the stage twice during a discussion of Moonlight. Perhaps I enjoy stages. Perhaps I enjoy coronation almonds. His mouth almost smiled. Nora continued before caution returned. Either you plan to dismiss the musicians, or you want to leave. Adrian looked down at her old-fashioned hat. And you are offering assistance? I am identifying a structural problem. Which is? Nora named it plainly. The king is trapped at his own luncheon. Around them, forks touched porcelain. The quartet moved into a brighter melody. Sunlight warmed the polished floor. Adrian lowered his voice. You say that as if it is amusing. You have 4 guards, 6 doors, and legal authority over everyone in the building. Exactly. If I walk out, every ambassador will call it an insult. If I order them not to, they will call it a crisis. Nora considered that. Then you require an accident. His gaze rested on her face. Do you often arrange accidents for strangers? Only when they stop people from putting food in museum pieces. Lord Harrow turned toward them. Nora lifted the coronation basin as if explaining its engraving. Adrian leaned closer with convincing royal interest. She whispered that the old stage lift now stood unguarded. The scenery corridor opened beside the restoration entrance. A cabinet from the Heritage exhibition was scheduled to leave before dessert. Adrian did not ask how she knew the route. He only asked, how large is the cabinet? Not large enough for your dignity. My dignity has attended 7 bride banquets. It is no longer in good condition. That answer decided her. They needed a distraction. Nora created one with historical accuracy. She approached Lord Harrow and informed him that the centerpiece at the main table was not a royal wedding urn. It was a funeral vessel used for the ashes of traitorous ministers. Harrow laughed. Nora showed him the inscription under the base. His laugh stopped. Within 2 minutes, servants were lifting the enormous urn away from Lady Mirabel. 3 ministers argued over who had approved it. Mirabel demanded a new centerpiece. The banquet folded into elegant panic. Adrian crossed to the stage under the excuse of examining a tapestry. Nora followed with a clipboard stolen from the display steward. Behind the curtain, sunlight became dusty shadow. Painted scenery leaned against ropes and pulleys. The air smelled of canvas, hot wood, and old powder. The lift platform waited beneath an arch. Nora pulled the lever. Nothing happened. Adrian studied the mechanism. Is this the accident? This is age. She kicked the release bar. The platform dropped 6 inches with a violent crack. Adrian caught her around the waist. Nora struck his chest, lost her hat, and heard a vase topple behind the curtain. They froze. Applause rose from the hall. Someone believed the noise was part of the music. Nora found herself held against a king who smelled of cedar, clean linen, and the faint citrus soap used by the palace. His hand was warm through her jacket. Her instincts stopped advising emigration and began offering ideas that were significantly less practical. Nora stepped away. The lift works. Adrian looked at the platform below their feet. 'Your standards are generous.' She pushed the lever again. The machinery groaned. They descended behind the stage, while a soprano began singing above them. For 10 glorious seconds, the plan succeeded. Then the lift stopped halfway. The king's head remained level with the stage floor. Nora was lower, standing beside his knees. Adrian looked down at her. "You said the corridor was open. It is below us." "We are not below us." Voices approached behind the curtain. Nora pulled at the release bar. It refused to move. Adrian tried to crouch, but the narrow platform offered no room. The curtain shifted. Nora seized a painted garden screen and dragged it in front of his head. From the hall, the Alpha King had disappeared. Behind the scenery, he was now concealed by an unusually handsome painted bush. Lady Celia's voice floated closer. "Your Majesty?" Adrian whispered, "I dislike gardens. Be one quietly." Nora climbed onto a support beam and reached the upper gear. Her skirt caught on a nail. The borrowed fabric tore with a sound loud enough to have political consequences. Adrian looked up. "Do not comment. I value my remaining freedom." She struck the gear with the heel of her shoe. The brake released. The platform dropped. Nora landed on Adrian. Adrian landed against the wall. The painted garden tipped forward above them. Lady Celia screamed as a two-dimensional fountain fell onto the stage. The lift reached the scenery corridor. Nora and Adrian ran. The underground passage was cool and dim. Dust rose beneath their shoes. Old masks stared from shelves. Rolled carpets crowded the walls. At the first turn, they found the exit locked. Adrian tested the iron handle. "Another structural problem?" "The palace owns many." Footsteps sounded behind them. Lord Harrow was shouting for guards. Nora searched the corridor. The ceremonial cabinet stood on a wheeled platform near the restoration door. It was tall, narrow, and scheduled for collection by Bell and Finch. Adrian followed her gaze. "No. You asked how large it was." Adrian looked at the cabinet. "I was hoping the answer would change." Nora opened the doors. Red velvet lined the interior. 2 shelves had been removed for transport. "If you remain here, Harrow finds you. If you climb inside, I wheel you through the hall." "There must be another choice." Nora reminded him. There was a cake dumbwaiter. Adrian removed his formal coat and entered the cabinet. Getting a 6'3" Alpha King into a jewel case required geometry, patience, and the temporary suspension of monarchy. He bent his knees. Nora moved one arm. He turned his shoulders. A silver display spoon caught in his sleeve. "Your left foot is on the velvet." "All of me is on the velvet." Nora reminded him that the velvet was original. Adrian promised to apologize. Nora closed the doors just as guards reached the corridor entrance. She covered the cabinet with a linen cloth, found the transport clipboard, and pushed. The wheels squealed. Inside, Adrian whispered something about maintenance budgets. Nora wheeled him through the restoration door and back into the Sun Hall. That was how she came to push the folded Alpha King past 32 marriage candidates at 12:43 in the afternoon. Lady Mirabelle still blocked the route. Her gaze moved over Nora's torn skirt, missing hat, dusty jacket, and suspicious cabinet. "Where is His Majesty?" Nora kept pushing. "I restore silver, not kings." The cabinet made an offended noise. Mirabelle stepped closer. Then the Queen Mother spoke from behind her. "Lady Mirabelle, I believe your uncle needs you." Dowager Queen Celeste stood beside the displaced funeral urn. She was elegant in dark green silk, silver-haired, and smiling like a woman who had already understood everything. Mirabelle hesitated. A Queen Mother outranked curiosity. She turned away. Celeste met Nora's eyes. Her gaze dropped to the cabinet. One royal eyebrow rose. Nora waited for guards. Instead, Celeste moved aside. "Restoration emergencies should never be delayed. Your Majesty is very understanding. I have raised a difficult object myself." The cabinet went perfectly still. Nora pushed it through the service doors, down a ramp, and into the palace courtyard. Bright noon sun struck her face. Bells rang 1 o'clock across the city. Kitchen steam drifted from open windows. She did not stop until the palace stood 2 streets behind them. Then she opened the cabinet. Adrian unfolded slowly. First came one boot, then a shoulder, then the black-haired head of a king whose expression had survived wars but nearly failed inside furniture. He stepped into the alley and straightened. His formal shirt was creased. Dust marked one cheek. A silver spoon still hung from his cuff. Nora removed it. "Royal property." Adrian looked at the spoon in her hand. "Keep it. You earned a decoration. It belongs to Bell and Finch. Then I have accidentally rewarded your employer." For several seconds, neither spoke. The noise of the capital surrounded them. Wheels rattled over stone. Shop doors opened. Somewhere nearby, a baker shouted about fresh rolls. Adrian looked toward the palace roof. "You did it." "You seem surprised." "Most people offer to help me because they want something." Nora explained that she wanted him out before his boots damaged the lining. His laugh arrived without warning. It was quiet, tired, and real. The sound changed his face more than a smile would have. Nora liked it immediately. That seemed unwise. He noticed her torn glove. His gaze rested on the split leather near her thumb. "You injured your hand?" Nora closed her fingers. "Old seam." Adrian offered his watch. "You dropped this behind the stage." She had not realized it remained in her palm during the escape. She accepted it by the chain, careful not to touch the silver. The back cover had cracked near the hinge. "It needs repair." "Do you repair watches as well as kings?" Nora considered the work similar. Too many small pieces, excessive noise, and owners who ignored maintenance. Another brief laugh escaped him. He reached for the watch, but Nora drew it back. "The hinge may break if you pocket it. Then keep it until it is safe." She studied him. "You trust a stranger with the royal watch?" "You already put me inside a cabinet. The watch seems a smaller risk." Nora tucked it into her gloved hand. Adrian gave her a card stamped with the royal seal. "Where should I send payment?" She could not give him the shop address without revealing the borrowed identity. She also could not continue pretending to be Lady Nora Vell. So she chose the narrow path between truth and disaster. "I will return it." "Where?" Nora suggested somewhere with a door large enough for him. He studied her old dress, practical gloves, and missing hat. Nora felt the king assembling facts. Before he completed the picture, palace bells began ringing in a rapid pattern. Adrian glanced toward the hill. "They have officially noticed I am gone." That took longer than expected. Harrow was probably still moving the funeral urn. Nora stepped backward. "You should return. You helped me escape." "I helped you leave the hall. Returning is your own bad decision." He folded the royal card into her palm. His fingers brushed the intact leather of her glove. "Your name?" Nora could safely give him that much. "Nora." "Only Nora?" "At present." She turned and joined the midday crowd before royal guards flooded the street. Nora did not look back. If she had, she would have seen the Alpha King standing in an alley with dust on his face, watching a supposed lady disappear among clerks and shop workers. She would also have seen him discover the silver spoon still caught in his other cuff. By 2 o'clock, Nora returned to Bell and Finch without a hat, with a torn skirt, and the Alpha King's broken watch. Mr. Finch asked whether she had saved the treaty tray and coronation basin. She had. Her reputation remained unclear. "A productive luncheon," he concluded. She placed Adrian's watch beneath the repair lamp. The case was older than she first thought. Its silver shell had been remade around an earlier mechanism. Fine scratches marked the back. Beneath the inner cover, a tiny 8-pointed star had been stamped into a silver verification plate. Mr. Finch identified it as a regent's office countersign. Officials once pressed that star beside the main royal seal to prove a document had passed a second inspection. The office had been dissolved 20 years earlier. Retired verification plates were sometimes reused in royal commemorative objects. That explained the watch, but not why Harrow arranged its repair. Nora could have removed her glove and searched the watch. She refused to invade Adrian's memories deliberately and repaired the hinge instead. At 4:15, 3 royal guards stopped outside the shop. Mr. Finch looked at Nora. Nora looked at the back door. The front bell rang. Alpha King Adrian entered Bell and Finch Antiques, carrying a silver spoon. The shop became extremely quiet. A customer nearly dropped a vase, caught it, and decided to leave. Mr. Finch bowed while Nora remained at the repair bench. Adrian wore a plain dark coat, though royal simplicity still involved excellent cloth. His alpha presence filled the narrow shop. He looked at Nora's work apron, pinned hair, and magnifying lens. Then he looked at the pale blue dress hanging behind the curtain. Only Nora, he observed. Nora removed the lens. At present. Mr. Finch glanced between them. Have you met? Adrian placed the spoon on the counter. Miss Bell decorated me with company property. It caught on him, while I was folded inside company property. Mr. Finch absorbed this with admirable professionalism. Walnut cabinet? Yes. Mr. Finch continued, original velvet? I apologized. Mr. Finch seemed satisfied. Adrian crossed to Nora's bench. You work here. The apron suggested it. You entered a royal presentation using someone else's invitation. Nora pointed out that it had her name. Adrian observed that it lacked her life. Nora set down her screwdriver. The guards remained outside, visible through the window. Am I under arrest? Adrian studied her face. Did you steal anything? No. Did you threaten anyone? Nora admitted threatening only a stage mechanism. Adrian continued the inquiry. Did you place a funeral urn at my bride table? That was Lord Harrow. His mouth moved. Then no. Mr. Finch quietly carried a tray of unrelated buttons into the back room. The tray did not need carrying. He simply understood the value of strategic absence. Nora opened a drawer and returned Adrian's watch. The hinge is repaired. Do not force the cover. He accepted it, then noticed the 8-pointed mark. What is that? A stamp from the old regent's office. Adrian's amusement disappeared. He turned the watch beneath the lamp. This belonged to my father. Was it repaired recently? Harrow arranged maintenance last winter. The shop clocks ticked around them. One rang 5 times, though it was not 5. Adrian closed his hand around the watch. I may have another object for you to examine. If it is a king, my cabinet fee has increased. It is a marriage contract. Nora stared at him. He added, the contract is less cooperative. That was how the Alpha King returned to her antique shop after escaping his noon bride banquet. It was also how Nora became involved in a royal conspiracy before she had repaired the lying clock. The marriage contract arrived the next morning in a locked case, escorted by guards, an archivist, and Harrow's secretary, Mr. Pike. Pike looked as if smiling required written authorization. Inside the case lay parchment, a seal box, and a necklace set with pale blue stones. The contract forced the next unmarried king to marry the eldest Harrow woman. Refusal transferred 3 northern districts to her family. Lady Mirabelle was the current candidate. Nora wondered whether eligibility included putting lemon tart on war treaties. The archivist declared the parchment, ink, and large royal seal authentic. A smaller 8-pointed countersign beside it also appeared correct. Nora began with the necklace. It was aggressively ancient. Its silver was blackened, its stones carefully chipped, and every mark looked placed according to a textbook. Under magnification, she found modern nickel inside each setting. Could that be repair? The archivist asked. Every setting was made at the same time. This is construction wearing an elderly coat. Adrian's gaze sharpened. The necklace was false, though the contract might remain genuine. The seal box carried the same Regent's office star hidden in Adrian's watch. Nora also found a modern screw beneath the tarnish. Can you open it without damage? Adrian asked. Nora looked offended. He corrected himself. How long? If Mr. Pike stops breathing on my hands, 10 minutes. It took 12 because royal screws shared royal ministers' belief in privilege. The die inside was modern beneath its darkened surface. Its 8-pointed star matched the contract's small countersign, including a tiny nick on the upper point. Then the countersign was made from an authentic pattern, the archivist concluded. Or copied from one, Nora corrected. The large royal seal could still belong to an old blank document. The smaller mark was the suspicious part. Pike called that speculation. Nora called the necklace new construction, rubbed with soot. Adrian ordered the contract returned to the royal vault under 2 seals, one held by the archive and one by the claimant. Nora retained the necklace and seal box. Pike objected until royal authority made the room feel smaller. After the escort left, Mr. Finch served tea. Adrian asked whether every shop object required a warning. Only the chairs, clocks, cabinets, lamps, mirrors, drawers, and one vindictive music box. Nora claimed the music box played whenever someone lied. Adrian tested it. The broken box remained silent. She lasted 4 seconds before confessing the trick. You used a disabled music box to test a king. It was available. Adrian then explained that Harrow wanted the engagement announced next week. Several ministers feared losing the northern districts. Nora understood the deeper insult. The banquet had displayed Adrian like an object, while strangers evaluated the crown attached to him. She believed the false necklace came from a local workshop. Craftsmen left habits in hidden joints and solder. Adrian hired her to trace those habits. Nora insisted on remaining independent, keeping her notes from Harrow, and forbidding Adrian from touching shop objects without permission. He removed his elbow from a 16th-century prayer desk and agreed. The investigation began that afternoon in the Royal Archive. The steward recognized Nora's work order. Will you require a cabinet? Not unless His Majesty becomes difficult. I will keep one available. Adrian met her among tall shelves and cedar cases. Celeste sat nearby, reading a book upside down. Did my son fit comfortably in the cabinet? She asked. No, Celeste approved. Good. Comfort encourages repetition. Adrian claimed his mother had no role in the investigation. Celeste said she supervised her own morale. The archive held gifts exchanged between the Vale and Harrow families. Adrian tried to help, but identified a sugar caster as an incense holder and a candle snuffer as a surgical tool. Your education was expensive, wasn't it? Nora asked. Extremely. Nora wondered whether the school could be prosecuted. He was demoted to holding the lamp. After 4 corrections, he stood with the stiffness of a punished apprentice. They found the Regent's star on 3 surviving office pieces repaired by Mercer and Sons. Pike had also signed the receipt for Adrian's watch. Before Nora left, Celeste supplied a chest of Adrian's childhood possessions. He objected too quickly to appear adult. Nora examined a bronze speaking medal. Her torn glove caught on its clasp, and memory opened. 14-year-old Adrian practiced expressions before receiving the medal. Solemn looked angry. Grateful looked ill. Modestly surprised looked like sudden stomach pain. He whispered that a ruler must accept praise without appearing hungry for it. Back in the archive, Nora choked on a laugh. Dust, she claimed. Celeste's delighted gaze moved to the torn glove. Later, an archivist praised Adrian. He accepted it, then asked Nora whether his expression was satisfactory. Modestly surprised, she answered. Silence followed. Nora realized her mistake while Celeste laughed. Adrian waited until they were alone. How did you know those exact words? You have a remarkable face. He studied her glove and the medal. Then he stepped back. You do not have to answer today. Before she left, he insisted he had improved the expression. The current version looks less ill, Nora conceded. The next morning, Nora and Adrian visited the abandoned Mercer workshop with 2 guards who failed to look ordinary. Nora opened the replaced lock with restoration picks. Is that legal? Adrian asked. You brought the law. Adrian objected that law did not work that way. Nora replied that it was how doors worked. Inside, blue polishing powder matched the false necklace. Adrian opened a forbidden drawer and spilled hundreds of brass rings. The drawer attacked, he explained. The guards pretended not to see their king collecting rings from the floor. Nora found a broken engraving tool beneath the bench. She removed her glove, touched the worn handle, and memory opened. A middle-aged craftsman sat at the bench. Sweat darkened his collar. Adrian's open watch lay beside him while he traced its verification star onto thin paper. Mr. Pike stood beside him. The necklace and countersign die must appear older than the contract, Pike warned. Lord Harrow wants no questions. The craftsman pushed the tool away. I made the seal box. I copied the watch mark. I even prepared your aging powder. That was the agreement. The agreement changed. Pike placed a pouch of coins on the bench, then leaned close. Finish the pledge piece. Take the noon coach west. If you remain after Friday, the minister cannot guarantee your safety. After Pike turned away, Mercer copied the star tracing, formula, and Pike's initials onto a smaller scrap. He loosened the watch mechanism and hid the scrap beneath it. It was not bravery. It was insurance from a man who had just understood that payment and survival were separate promises. The craftsman's fear struck Nora like cold water. When the memory vanished, Nora claimed the craftsman had taken the noon coach west. Adrian asked how she knew. Nora blamed a Western timetable that did not exist. He looked at the bare wall. Outside, she sighed. In the courtyard, Nora explained that bare skin revealed the latest memory intense enough to mark an object. Ordinary handling left no trace. The fragments lacked context, and repeated readings caused pain. Adrian's first concern was that Harrow might use her. You could use me, Nora pointed out. Yes, he admitted. The Crown could call forced readings public service. He promised it would not. Nora set boundaries. No private letters, loyalty tests, or readings she considered unsafe. Adrian accepted them. Then he remembered his watch. Nora admitted seeing all 7 escape plans, including the linen cupboard and chair room. The 6th plan succeeded, Adrian argued. You were locked among chairs for 18 minutes. Adrian maintained that he had left the banquet hall. Nora called it a breathtaking triumph. After one severe look, he laughed. The guards inside stopped searching long enough to wonder whether the sound came from their king. Adrian realized she had known from the beginning. Nora maintained that the rest was observation. The cabinet? Professional inspiration. He shook his head, still smiling. I believed you were a mysterious noblewoman. I believed you would fit in the cabinet. We were both deceived. The craftsman's memory led them to the Western coach office. Records showed that Elias Mercer had purchased a ticket under another name. The destination was a small town near the border. Adrian sent trusted officers to find him. Meanwhile, Nora returned to the palace collection 3 times that week. The investigation developed a routine. Adrian held the lamp, Nora corrected him, and Celeste supplied tea with unwanted childhood history. She once brought a wooden practice sword and announced that 6-year-old Adrian had challenged a curtain to a duel. The curtain won, Celeste added. Nora recorded that as national heritage. Another afternoon, Adrian reached for polishing paste near a valuable silver frame. Nora slapped his hand away before 6 frozen assistants. That patina is irreplaceable, she explained. Celeste later pinned Nora's "Do Not Polish" label to her son's back. It remained there through half a council meeting. Adrian returned, holding the label. Was this your work? Nora inspected it. Authentic, but misapplied. The investigation produced real evidence beneath the jokes. The false necklace used metal purchased by Harrow's estate manager. Mercer had made the modern countersign die inside the old seal box. Pike arranged Adrian's watch repair so Mercer could copy its Regent's verification star. Still, the contract itself remained difficult. Its parchment was old. The ink was old. The large royal seal was genuine. The Regent's office had kept pre-sealed blank instruments for wartime orders. Nora suspected Harrow had stolen one. He then added the contract in period ink and authenticated it with Mercer's copied countersign. Proving that required the missing ledger of pre-sealed instruments. The ledger had disappeared from the archive. Adrian called a private meeting in a small council room. Nora attended as a technical expert. Harrow attended as a political infection. He sat beside Lady Mirabelle beneath a portrait of Adrian's grandfather. Pike stood behind him. Mirabelle wore pale blue stones similar to the false necklace. She gave Nora a cool smile. The cabinet restorer. Adrian's gaze moved to Mirabelle. Miss Bell is an independent royal consultant. How modern, how necessary. Harrow opened the meeting by praising tradition for 12 uninterrupted minutes. He described the contract as sacred, the Harrow claim as reluctant, and Mirabelle as devoted to national stability. Nora noticed Mirabelle suppress a yawn during the devotion. When invited to report, Nora explained the modern alloy and forged pledge piece. Harrow dismissed the necklace as a later reproduction. The contract remained legally sound. Mirabelle turned toward him. You told me it had remained in our chapel since the agreement was signed. Harrow did not lower his voice enough. You are required to wear it, not understand its repairs. For the first time, Mirabelle looked at her uncle instead of Nora. The coldness in her face had changed direction. Unless, he added, Miss Bell has discovered that parchment now speaks. Nora kept her gloved hands folded. Parchment speaks constantly. Mostly it says people should store it away from damp walls. Celeste coughed into her hand. Adrian looked down at his notes. Harrow continued. You entered the royal banquet under false identity. Your expertise appears as questionable as your manners. The insult was carefully placed. He wanted Nora defensive and Adrian angry. Nora refused both. My manners removed a funeral urn from Lady Mirabelle's lunch table. Mirabelle's face changed. Several ministers looked at Harrow. Nora continued, My expertise also found modern nickel in your ancient necklace. We all contribute differently. Adrian ended the meeting before Harrow recovered. In the corridor, Nora released a breath. Adrian walked beside her. You enjoyed that. Only professionally? You smiled. Nora called it technical satisfaction. Adrian noted that his mother nearly applauded. Nora credited Her Majesty's respect for metallurgy. They reached an alcove overlooking the bright afternoon courtyard. Sun warmed the stone rail. The city spread below in gray roofs and narrow streets. Adrian rested his hands on the balustrade. Harrow will investigate you now. He already has. Adrian concluded that the shop needed protection. Nora stiffened. Protection can resemble occupation. He heard the warning. Plain guards across the street. No one enters unless Finch requests it. And no searching customers. Agreed. Nora also prohibited frightening Mr. Finch. Adrian asked whether that was possible. Not if anyone scratches mahogany. Adrian turned toward her. The severity had left his face. You were right at the banquet. About the funeral urn? Adrian meant being trapped. Nora waited. He looked over the city. Every person in that hall wanted the king to choose. None cared whether the man wanted to know them. The admission carried no self-pity. That made it sadder. Nora touched the intact fingers of her glove together. Objects are treated that way. People decide what they are worth before learning where they have been. And what do you do? I look for repairs. His eyes met hers. For a quiet moment, the palace sounds receded. No music, no ministers, no cabinet wheels. Only wind moved through the open arch. Adrian lifted one hand as if he might touch her cheek. Then a servant hurried around the corner carrying a tray of ink. The servant saw them, panicked, and turned too quickly. The tray tilted. Adrian caught it. Black ink splashed across his white shirt. Nora stared. The servant began apologizing with such speed that individual words surrendered. Adrian looked down at the spreading stain. Nora tried not to laugh. She failed when he said, "Do not polish." The almost kiss dissolved into ink, embarrassment, and Adrian borrowing a footman's coat to cross the palace. That evening, Nora found a new white shirt delivered to the shop. The note read, "For technical comparison, this one has not been attacked." She laughed alone at the workbench, then folded the note into her apron pocket. Their progress continued until Nora touched Adrian's fountain pen. The pen lay on the archive table beside the missing ledger inventory. Adrian had left to question a clerk. Nora reached for it without thinking. Her glove had been removed for delicate paperwork. Memory seized her. A tall man stood with his back to the room. He wore Adrian's dark council coat, and two men in guard uniforms faced him. Heavy curtains and poor light hid his profile. In Adrian's voice, he ordered Bell and Finch closed. Nora was to be removed before Harrow reached her, along with every ledger and object connected to the case. One guard asked what should happen after the investigation. The figure's shoulders hardened. In the same familiar voice, he said Nora would remain under royal control until he decided otherwise. The memory ended. Nora dropped the pen. It rolled across the table and struck the false necklace. Her stomach turned cold. The face had never been clear, but the coat and voice appeared to be Adrian's. The command fit every fear she had named in the courtyard. Royal control. He had accepted her boundaries while planning to remove her choices. Nora put on her gloves and left the palace before he returned. She told herself to examine the memory. Fragments lacked context. Objects could mislead. Then she reached Bell and Finch. Royal guards surrounded the shop. The front door stood open. Mr. Finch was outside beside 3 crates. Customers gathered across the road. Nora stopped at the corner. One guard carried the shop ledger. Another removed the false necklace case. The memory had become real. Mr. Finch saw her. Relief crossed his face, followed by warning. "Miss Bell," a royal officer called. "You must come with us." Nora stepped backward. The officer raised both hands. "The king ordered protection." She heard only ordered. Adrian's carriage turned into the street. Nora did not wait. She slipped through the crowd, crossed the fabric market, and entered an alley behind the old printworks. Years of delivering restored objects had taught her every service lane in the district. She reached the river stairs before royal officers blocked the bridge. Nora had no dramatic plan. Unlike kings, she did not prepare 7 escape routes for lunch. She had one route, sensible shoes, and fury. She took the ferry south and spent the night in Mr. Finch's sister's empty workshop. The place smelled of glue and old canvas. Moonlight crossed covered furniture. Nora sat on the floor with her tool case and the broken engraving tool. She had taken it from Mercer before the palace received it. It was the strongest physical evidence connecting Pike to the forgery. Adrian would want it. That thought hurt more than it should. She removed his note from her apron for technical comparison. The humor now felt like another tool used to lower her guard. Nora slept badly beside a rolled carpet and dreamed of cabinets that locked from the outside. At dawn, someone knocked 3 times on the workshop door. "If you intend to stab me with evidence," Adrian called through the wood, "please avoid the face. It appears on currency." Nora opened the door with the chain fastened. Adrian stood alone in yesterday's coat. He had found her through Mr. Finch's sister, with assistance from his mother. That was more believable than Finch volunteering information. Nora accused him of closing the shop and ordering her confinement. Adrian explained that one loyal plainclothes guard had followed Pike's courier to an oil merchant. He intercepted a written order to burn the rear workroom that evening. Adrian had only minutes to remove everyone and secure the evidence. When Nora named the words from the pen, recognition crossed his face. Pike had taken the pen during the council meeting and returned it later. The second workshop guard had disappeared. Adrian's officers found Pike's payments in his room. He had overheard Nora explain her ability and fear of royal control. A memory did not need to be true. It only needed enough fear or concentration to mark the object. Pike could have worn Adrian's spare council coat and staged the scene in a dark room. Nora unfastened the chain. The shop was safe at the old customs building under Finch's supervision. That meant the chairs were wrapped correctly and the kingdom might survive. Adrian admitted he should have warned her sooner. He had tried to control the danger and controlled the room instead. Send faster messengers, Nora told him. I will include that in the national reforms. Nora sat on an overturned frame. Harrow knows about my ability. Pike may have guessed after Mercer. Then every object can become a trap. Adrian asked whether they could prove the memory was staged. She replayed the fragment. The hand holding the pen had not appeared. Adrian's voice carried the right rhythm, but the room bell rang 3 times in the background. At that hour, the Palace West Tower had been under repair. Its bell had not rung for a month. The sound belonged to Harrow House, Nora explained. Adrian's expression hardened. Pike trained as a court announcer. He can imitate voices. Your voice? Poorly, I assumed. Nora noted that the pen had been convinced. Adrian blamed the pen's low standards. It belonged to you. He gave her a flat look. The insult repaired more between them than a grand speech might have. They returned to the customs building after sunrise. Bell and Finch antiques had been recreated inside a government warehouse with alarming precision. Mr. Finch stood among the arranged furniture, directing guards. The French cabinet belongs 2 inches left. A guard moved it. Your other left. The guard moved it back. Mr. Finch noticed Nora and Adrian. The king's men are strong, but they have no feeling for visual balance. Adrian surveyed the warehouse. You arranged a temporary shop during an arson threat? Customers dislike interruption. The front doors opened. A woman entered carrying a cracked vase. Mr. Finch smiled. See? Royal protection had accidentally improved business. Customers came to purchase antiques and observe guards attempting to wrap porcelain. One guard had been assigned to the dishonest clock. It rang 13 times beside his head every hour. By noon, he looked ready to confess crimes he had not committed. Nora examined Adrian's pen under magnification. Fine red fibers clung beneath the cap. Harrow House used red felt on its writing desks. The nib held violet ink. Adrian used black. Pike used violet for official corrections. More importantly, Nora found a shallow tooth mark near the cap. Pike chewed pens during tense meetings. Nora had watched him do it. Adrian stared at the mark. That is unpleasant evidence. Evidence rarely considers presentation. Can it clear me? Nora explained. The false bell and ink supported staging. Adrian quietly noted that she had still believed it. The quiet statement held no accusation. Nora met his eyes. It showed me exactly what I feared you would do. Then Harrow researched both of us. That was the true cruelty of the trap. It had used Adrian's authority and Nora's history. They had little time to recover. Harrow announced a public contract hearing for the next morning. He intended to force the council to recognize the marriage claim before Mercer could be found. The officers sent west returned without the craftsman. His coach had arrived empty, though the driver remembered slowing near a roadside chapel during heavy rain. Harrow controlled the claimant's key, the missing ledger, and the public schedule. Nora had a modern necklace, an engraving tool, repair receipts, and a staged memory. It was enough to raise doubt. It was not enough to destroy the claim. Then Mr. Finch brought her Adrian's repaired watch. It stopped at noon, he said. Adrian opened it. It was working yesterday. Nora listened. No ticking. She removed the back and found blue powder near the inner rim, the same powder used in the false necklace. Mercer had opened this watch while copying the regent's countersign. Nora remembered the secret movement of his hand after Pike's threat. Nora lifted the mechanism. Beneath it lay a disc of thin parchment. The scrap held a tracing of the watch's 8-pointed countersign, including the nick on its upper point. Beside it, Mercer had written the aging formula, the date, his initials, and the words ordered by E. Pike for L. Harrow. Mercer had hidden proof inside the object Pike was least likely to destroy, the dead king's watch. The shifting scrap had finally stopped the mechanism. Mr. Finch compared the formula with the residue on the contract photographs. Iron, walnut stain, and powdered limestone. A theatrical aging mixture, he explained. Good under ordinary light, poor under heat. Adrian looked at Nora. Heat? Old ink sinks into parchment. Fresh writing treated with aging powder sits nearer the surface. Can you demonstrate that without burning my alleged marriage contract? Nora found his concern touching. Adrian expected Harrow to object if they burned his future. Then we use a warming glass. Mr. Finch owned one for loosening old glue. Under controlled heat, the powder would release a bitter walnut smell. Fresh strokes would darken differently from true period writing. They now had a test. They also needed access to the contract. Adrian could order it. Harrow would claim royal interference. Nora proposed a simpler method. She would challenge the contract during the public hearing and request examination before witnesses. Adrian objected. Harrow would expose her false invitation and ability. He will do that anyway. Then I will prevent him. Nora asked whether he meant to order silence. The question landed between them. Adrian did not flinch. What would you have me do? Change the rule. Do not speak for me. The hearing hall was full before 10 the next morning. News of a forced royal marriage attracted more interest than tax reform, military funding, and basic sanitation combined. Council members filled the curved benches. Noble families crowded the gallery. Clerks arranged papers beneath high windows. Bright daylight made secrecy difficult, though Harrow appeared determined to attempt it. Nora entered in her plain work dress with Mr. Finch beside her. She carried a tool case and warming glass. Whispers moved through the hall. Lady Mirabel sat beside her uncle in silver silk. She looked composed until she saw the false necklace in Nora's case. An archive clerk placed the original contract between them in its locked case. Hearing rules required the disputed document to remain under joint custody until the presiding officer requested it. Adrian took the central chair. Celeste sat behind him with the delighted attention of someone attending an excellent trial and a mediocre engagement. Harrow began with law, ancestry, sacrifice, and national stability. He used so many grand words that Nora suspected he charged them rent. Then he attacked her. He revealed the mistaken invitation and described Nora as an Omega shop worker who had impersonated a lady to approach the king. The gallery erupted. Adrian raised one hand. Silence fell under his alpha command. Harrow smiled. Surely such a person cannot testify on royal heritage. Adrian looked across the hall. Current council rules allow only titled experts to submit evidence. Nora's stomach tightened. He continued by invoking the Royal Evidence Charter. It allowed the presiding sovereign to admit material evidence during an active crown dispute. The council could review that decision afterward. For this hearing, any citizen may submit physical evidence with a verifiable chain of custody. Harrow stood. You are twisting an emergency clause. Then challenge it after we examine the evidence, Adrian replied. Celeste leaned toward a clerk. That expression was modestly surprised. Adrian heard her. His face became less modest. Nora approached the evidence table. She did not mention her supernatural ability. Instead, she explained her profession. She showed the modern alloy, matching blue powder, repair records, Pike's signature, and Mercer's marked engraving tool. Harrow dismissed each piece as coincidence. Nora produced Adrian's watch and Mercer's hidden scrap. Pike's face lost color. She explained how Mercer copied the authentic countersign during the watch repair. The contract and modern die repeated the same nicked upper point. The royal archivist examined both impressions. He confirmed the match. Harrow changed tactics. Even if the seal was copied, the parchment and ink remain old. The materials are old, Nora corrected. The writing is recent. She requested the contract. Harrow refused to surrender his claimant's key. Lady Mirabel surprised everyone by taking that key from the chain at his wrist. The archive clerk used the second key, and Mirabel placed the contract on the table. Her uncle hissed her name. Mirabel did not look at him. If it is genuine, it will survive examination. Nora liked her slightly more than before. The improvement did not yet include treaty trays. Mr. Finch positioned the warming glass above the lower paragraph. Gentle heat passed across the parchment. For several seconds, nothing happened. Harrow began to smile. Then the hall filled with the smell of bitter walnuts. The final marriage clause darkened. Earlier writing remained unchanged. The contract was an authentic blank royal document altered with old ink and artificial aging powder. The key reversal became clear in full daylight. Harrow had stolen an old blank bearing a genuine royal seal. Pike copied the countersign from Adrian's watch. Mercer made the die, seal box, necklace, and aging mixture. The ledger was removed to hide the blank and repair chain. Pike ran. He reached the side door before 2 guards blocked it. The dishonest clock rang from Nora's evidence crate. Everyone turned. Mr. Finch looked surprised. I do not remember packing that. Celeste lowered her hand from the clock mechanism. It seemed appropriate, she said. Pike was arrested while the clock rang 13 times at 10:30. Harrow remained in his seat. His grand robe suddenly looked like fabric covering a small, frightened man. Adrian ordered the missing ledger recovered and Harrow's account seized. Guards later found the ledger behind a false panel in Pike's office. Its numbered list identified the exact pre-sealed blank used for the contract. Then he did something Nora had not expected. He let her finish. She explained each step for the public record. No interruption, no royal summary, no attempt to turn her work into his victory. When she concluded, Adrian addressed the council. Miss Bell entered my banquet through a clerical error. Harrow lifted his head, sensing one remaining weapon. Adrian continued, she left it through superior planning. Laughter moved through the hall. She also prevented me from entering a fraudulent marriage. I consider the cabinet incident forgiven. Celeste raised her voice. I do not. The laughter grew. Even Mirabelle smiled. Harrow and Pike were removed. That afternoon, officers found Mercer hiding under sanctuary at the roadside chapel. He surrendered after receiving written protection and later confirmed the work order. Mirabelle publicly renounced the forged claim and asked Nora to restore the pale blue necklace into something honest. Nora agreed on one condition. No lemon tart on the work table. Mirabelle accepted with dignity. Outside the hearing hall, the corridor filled with ministers, reporters, and people suddenly eager to claim they had always trusted antique restorers. Nora counted 4 noblemen who had ignored her at the banquet. All 4 now bowed. The 5th asked whether she could examine his family silver. Certainly, Nora told him. Bell and Finch has revised its royal rates. Mr. Finch approved. Adrian found her near the west stairs. For once, no guards or ministers stood close. Sunlight crossed the corridor between them. The shop can reopen today, he said. It never closed. Mr. Finch sold a vase during the evacuation. Adrian found that unsurprising. Adrian held out his watch. It stopped again? Nora listened. The mechanism ticked perfectly. No, it did not. Then it may require examination. His expression was solemn, but not convincingly. Nora took it with her glove. The hinge is sound. Remove the glove. She looked up. Adrian's seriousness returned. You have my permission. Objects carried private rooms inside them. Nora never entered without cost. Are you certain? Yes. She drew off one glove and placed her palm against the silver case. Memory opened. It was noon in the palace alley. Adrian stood dusty and creased after unfolding from the cabinet. Nora faced him in her torn blue dress, holding a stolen spoon like an accusation. The memory did not center on the escape, the banquet, or his freedom. It centered on her. She was laughing because he had found the spoon caught in his cuff. Sunlight warmed her face. Her hair had come loose. She looked entirely unlike every polished candidate in the Sun Hall. Within the memory, Adrian felt something unfamiliar and simple. He wanted to see her again. Not the mysterious lady. Not the useful restorer, Nora. The memory released her. She held the watch between them. Adrian watched her carefully. What did you see? Nora put her glove back on. A serious maintenance problem. His eyebrows rose. The owner has been dishonest about the mechanism. Can it be repaired? Nora considered repair possible but expensive. Adrian reminded her that the crown could afford it. That remains to be seen. He smiled. 3 days later, the Royal Heritage Luncheon was held again. Adrian had not wanted another banquet. Celeste insisted that allowing Harrow's fraud to become the final memory of the event would be depressing. She also wanted to see whether her son would attempt a second escape. The Sun Hall looked different without the funeral urn. The treaty tray remained behind glass. Every ceremonial cup carried a small card written by Nora. "This is not for fruit pits." Nora attended in a new dark blue dress and her work gloves. The steward announced her as master restorer of Bell and Finch Antiques. Adrian waited near the stage. When Nora approached, he gestured toward the restored lift. "It has been repaired." "By whom?" Adrian named 3 engineers. Nora asked whether they were sober. "My mother supervised." Nora looked toward Celeste. The Queen Mother held the lever. That was not reassuring. Adrian offered his hand. "Will you join me? On the lift? For a dance?" Nora placed her gloved hand in his. "And afterward?" "Afterward, I intend to leave through the front door. A radical plan." Adrian had been advised to try honesty. They moved onto the floor. Adrian danced better than he identified antiques, which Nora called an unnecessarily specific compliment. Halfway through the music, Celeste pulled the stage lever. The repaired platform descended without warning. Lord Harrow's replacement, who had been delivering a long speech beside it, vanished smoothly below the floor. The hall became silent. Celeste looked at the lever. "Restoration emergency." Nora laughed against Adrian's shoulder. The new minister reappeared moments later, unharmed and significantly more concise. Comedy returned to the banquet. So did dessert, served on modern plates under Nora's supervision. After sunset, Adrian walked Nora home. He stopped outside Bell and Finch, where the dishonest clock glowed in the window. "I have something for you." He handed her a small box. Inside lay a new silver pocket watch. It had no crest, initials, or inherited mark. The surface was blank. Nora did not touch it. "Who held it last?" "The watchmaker placed it in the box. I never removed it." The gift carried no royal memory and no hidden past. Adrian spoke quietly. "You spend your life handling what other people leave behind. I wanted to give you something that begins with you." Nora looked at the untouched watch. Then she handed it back. Concern crossed his face. "You dislike it?" "Hold it first." "Why?" Nora explained that every antique needed a first memory. Adrian understood. He closed his hand around the watch and looked at Nora beneath the shop lamp. Wheels passed on the evening street. Warm metal and old paper scented the open doorway. He did not make a grand declaration. He did not invoke rank, fate, or the moon. He thought that he loved the woman who put him inside a cabinet and refused to let him hide behind a crown. Nora touched the watch. The memory opened and told her everything. When it released her, Adrian looked unusually uncertain. "Well?" Nora placed the watch in her pocket. "The mechanism is excellent," Adrian said her name. Nora maintained that the owner remained difficult. She kissed him before he could try a third time. His surprise lasted one breath. Then his hand settled at her waist, warm and careful. The shop clocks ticked around them in different times. The dishonest clock rang 13 times. Neither stopped. 6 months later, Nora was a partner at Bell and Finch. Laws now protected people with rare gifts from compulsory use. Adrian visited twice a week and remained forbidden to polish anything. The curtain-dueling sword stayed on display as national heritage. At the next Royal Heritage Luncheon, Adrian remained until the end. Instead of checking doors, he watched Nora prevent a minister from filling an ancient bowl with olive stones. She pointed toward the entrance. Adrian offered his arm, and they left through the front door in full daylight. It was more comfortable than a cabinet. If this story grabbed your heart, hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss our next story. We'll see you in the next one.